This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
A science story, huh?
These NYU scientists,
I felt
really
right.
I was so
And I just thought, well,
I had figured it out.
It was that golden moment.
Because science was on my side.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Story Clatter, where true personal stories about science help us to discover how weird, complicated, and deeply human this world can be. I'm your host, Misha Gajewski, and in today's episode, both of our stories are about the majestic creature known as whales. I mean, obviously, they're about more than that, but I don't want to spoil anything. So let's jump in. Our first story is from the lead educator at the California Science Center, Brittany Munson. Her story is recorded in February this year in Los Angeles with our friends at LAist. Here's Brittany.
I press the stop button and then rewind. For a few minutes, I sit and listen as the VHS tape whirs back to the start. Once it reaches the beginning, I press play, and in a few moments, I'm hypnotized as I'm watching killer whales breach and frolic. I'm about 4 years old, and I'm watching the movie Free Willy for the fourth time that day. My babysitter has the easiest job on the planet. People often ask me, what is it about killer whales? Why orcas of all animals? And to this day, I still don't have a fully concrete answer. It has something to do with their simple yet elegant coloration, the way their eye patches hint at a facial expression, their intelligence and their mystery. Whatever it is, I can say that I've loved these animals ever since I was very, very little. When I was about 7 years old, I went to SeaWorld for the very first time, and I saw the nighttime shamu show. It changed my life forever. The pool was lit in the most ethereal way. They had the most breathtaking song that was playing, and it etched its way into my heart. And as I sat there watching that show, that was the moment that I knew. I just knew that I was going to grow up to be a shamu trainer. When I was about 12 years old, I really got to work in investigating and learning as much as I possibly could about killer whales and the shamus of SeaWorld. And I discovered that shamu was a stage name. So, yeah, when the whales were performing, they were all called shamu, but when they weren't performing, they had their own individual names. And so I learned all of those names. I learned how to identify each whale based on their patterns and their markings. I learned their birthdays, their personalities, their family lineages. I even found a trainer on Twitter when that was a thing. And I remember reaching out to this trainer and asking them, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, about how hard is it to become a shamu trainer? And their response was an 8. So I thought to myself, okay, I can do 8. So as the years went on and I was doing more and more research, I had a plan that was forming. Step 1, I needed to make it to Moorpark College and get my exotic animal training and management program certificate. Step 2, I needed to make it to SeaWorld. And step 3, kiss and play with shamu for the rest of my days. All while avoiding those gross organic chemistry and physics classes, so help me God. I had heard nothing but horror stories about those classes, how they were soul-sucking, how it was almost impossible to pass them. So when I found out that I didn't necessarily have to take those classes to make it to shamu, that was fine by me. And then it was February of 2010. I was 19 years old, and I was sitting in my oceanography class when the professor broke the news to us that one of the orcas at SeaWorld Orlando had killed one of its trainers. Silence fell in the classroom, and my heart sank. It was a complete and utter tragedy. And yet, I wasn't exactly surprised that something like this happened. I had known the risks for years, But as the days went on and more details came out, I had a really hard time seeing past how SeaWorld handled the situation. I had justified to myself for a long time that these whales were there to educate and inspire the public. They certainly educated and inspired me. But it was becoming apparent that perhaps the entertainment the whales were providing was starting to overshadow their need for respect and well-being. And so, with my eyes opened, I had to pivot. I wrestled with myself for weeks, bargaining with my soul to see if there was any way that I could hold on to what my childhood dreams promised me. But I knew deep down I wasn't going to be able to separate my values from my work. And so I let go. It was the hardest thing I had ever had to face at that time in my life. What was I? Who was I if I wasn't going to be a Shamu trainer? That had been my future identity ever since I was 7. And now I was 19 and I was staring ahead at my question mark-shaped future with a sinking feeling. I took some time to reflect and see what I could do next. And I decided that I would see what would happen if I did get my degree in marine biology. And so I leaned in and I took the gross organic chemistry classes. And I took the gross physics classes. And a few years later, I emerged from the University of California, Santa Barbara, with my Bachelor's of Science degree in Aquatic Biology. Upon graduation, people asked me, are you going to go back to school? And where do you want to end up? And my response to them was, probably not. And I don't know. I took some time to explore internships, and on my journeys, I saw countless species of whales. I saw humpback whales, blue whales, even beluga whales. But my eyes were always scanning the horizon, searching for those elusive creatures of my dreams. As many times as I had been out to sea, I still had yet to see a killer whale in its natural environment. Eventually, I ended up in Ketchikan, Alaska, working as a naturalist for Allen Marine Tours. And I remember the only question I asked my interviewer was, how often do you see killer whales in that area? The date was May 12th, 2018. I was sailing on the Sea Otter Express with Captain Tony, and we had about 20 guests on our boat. And I was using my binoculars to scan for wildlife, looking for eagles in the trees, looking for any deer that could be grazing along the shoreline, and of course, scanning the waters for any activity there. And then I start to see something way, way out in the distance, some splashes, some disturbances in the water. And so I call up Captain Tony. Hey, Tony, way, way out there about the 10 o'clock position, just off the shore of Annette Island, I think I see something. There's silence for a moment, and Tony replies, yeah, all right, I see it. We're going to head over. Click. Okay, so I pick up my microphone, I hop on, and I let our guests know, hey, we think we see something. We don't know quite what it is yet, but we're going to go check it out. Just keep your eyes peeled. So the Sea Otter Express gets closer and closer to this zone of activity, and I see it. A big black fin slices through the calm Alaskan sea. And another, and another. And I'm looking at the fins of killer whales. I gasp, and I don't know whether or not I should laugh or cry. Both of my hands end up over my heart as I'm staring at these creatures, utterly in disbelief that my dream is coming true, and they're starting to make their way closer to our boat to swim alongside us. By now, my guests have noticed that their naturalist hasn't said anything for quite some time, and she's not really moving much, and so they're looking at me with some concern. And I'm finally able to break out of it and find the words and share with them exactly how much this moment means to me. And I can see their facial expressions start to shift and soften as the realization sinks in. And then I tell them facts about the whales. All of the documentaries, the textbooks, the encyclopedias I had devoured throughout the years came to life through my narration. the book my mom gave me when I was a kid, the lecture I attended when I was a teenager, they pieced together beautifully in this moment. The whales stayed with us for a few minutes before they decided that they were going to depart and swim out to sea. And as I watched them swim away, I was just left in awe. It finally happened. I saw them, they were beautiful, and they were free. With one final tail slap, they disappeared beneath the waves, and they never knew the dream they fulfilled that day. I never did become a Shamu trainer, and I don't think I ever will. But if I could go back in time and have a chat with my childhood self in the minutes that passed as she rewound Free Willy for the 5th time that day, I think that she would be ecstatic about her journey. I would tell her how she's sailed on EV Nautilus, exploring with scientists who are making groundbreaking discoveries about the deep sea. I would tell her how she's been scuba diving in the Great Barrier Reef and has aided in coral reef restoration efforts in the Bahamas, how she's sailed through the Bering Sea, how her name appears in the credits of an IMAX film about blue whales, how she has traveled the world and has shared her experience and her passion with a global audience. And yeah, she's even seen killer whales in the wild multiple times. Today, people continue to ask me, are you going to go back to school? And where do you want to end up? And my response to them today is still, probably not, and I don't know. And I'm proud of that answer. Today, more than ever, I know that we may not end up where we expect to be, but if we do follow our passions, we will always end up where we need to be. Thank you.
I can weirdly relate to Brittany's story because growing up, I wanted to work with dolphins after visiting SeaWorld. I know, very millennial of me. But clearly, that career didn't work out. So, if you'd like to learn more about Brittany, head over to our website, storyclatter.org. Not everyone wants to step up to the mic, and that's okay. There's another way to be part of the Story Collider, by supporting us as a donor. Right now, more than ever, we need spaces where scientists and science communicators can share their voices. Personal stories cut through the noise. They make science human, relatable, and real. But bringing those stories to life takes resources. That's where our donors come in. They help us produce the podcast, amplify voices that might otherwise go unheard, and create moments that stay with you long after the episode ends. If that matters to you, you can support us at storyclatter.org/donate. Most people give about $10 a month, but every tax-deductible contribution, no matter the size, helps keep the stories coming, so thank you for being part of it. When I was in my 20s, I thought all the older people in my life were joking when they told me how even a couple of drinks was too much. But then I hit my 30s and realized it very much was not a joke. Like, I'm not talking about going out hard. I mean, I'll have a totally reasonable night, maybe meet some friends, have a drink or two, get home at a decent hour, and then somehow I still wake up feeling groggy, unfocused, like your brain didn't fully reboot overnight. Which is why I tried Cheers Restore from Cheers Health. And I'll be honest, I was skeptical, but the difference the next morning was noticeable. Like, I actually slept well, I woke up clear-headed, I didn't have that low-grade ugh feeling hanging over the day. The way it works is kind of interesting because the problem isn't just dehydration. When alcohol leaves your system, your brain kind of rebounds, which is what makes you feel bad. The DHM in Cheers helps smooth that out while you sleep, and the cysteine helps your liver break down the toxic byproducts of alcohol more efficiently. So, instead of waking up feeling like garbage, you wake up feeling pretty normal. They've sold over 50 million doses, they're backed by doctors and PhDs, so take Cheers Restore after your last drink or before going to bed and wake up feeling at least 50% better or your money back. For a limited time, our listeners are getting 20% off their entire order by using code Collider at cheershealth.com. Just head to cheershealth.com and use Collider for 20% off. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. As soon as I found out I was pregnant, I stopped scooping my cat's litter, which meant my partner had to take over litter duty. And honestly, I feel kind of bad about it. No one likes scooping litter. So I'm very excited because we're about to try the Whisker Litter Robot, which feels like exactly the kind of thing both my partner and future me are going to be grateful for, especially because the idea of daily scooping while sleep deprived sounds terrible. The litter robot automatically cycles after every use, so you're not constantly scooping or handling waste every single day. And the Whisker app sends real-time notifications about usage, your cat's weight, and whether the unit needs attention, which honestly sounds amazing for tired, overwhelmed brains. I'm especially excited about having one less recurring chore to think about because when you're already managing a million tiny responsibilities, saving time and mental energy really matters. Whisker also has different litter robot models depending on your setup, whether you've got one cat or a whole furry little family. Plus, starter bundles that make getting set up easier. Maintain your cat's litter while focusing on your growing family. Learn more about Whisker Litter robot models and starter kits today to get set up before your new baby arrives. Take an additional $50 off bundles with code Collider when you shop whisker.com/collider. That's an additional $50 off bundles with code Collider at whisker.com/collider. Check out our new podcast called The Persistence Lab, a show from AbbVie that tells the stories of the patients, scientists, and clinicians who are committed to driving real change in medicine and healthcare, and the resilience that pushes them forward. These aren't headlines. They're deeply human moments that show how progress happens, one step at a time. You can find The Persistence Lab now on your favorite podcast platform. Our next story is from Maya Santangelo. She's a professional nerd, diver, and marine scientist. Her story is performed at a show we did in partnership with Rolex's Our World Underwater Scholarship Society back in 2024. Here's Maya.
It's January 2019, and I'm off to an awesome start to the year because I'm working in Antarctica. And this is something I never thought I would get to do. When I started diving 13 years before, I thought that my only option for a career in scuba diving was to join the military, and then I would never see another fish again. But here I am working on a tourist expedition ship as the undersea specialist, where my job is to dive and film and share stories of what would otherwise be out of sight and out of mind. When most people come on a trip to Antarctica, marine invertebrates like sponges aren't usually on their list of things that they want to see, and they don't usually expect there to be much living in really cold water at all. So getting to be the person that voluntarily throws themselves into the coldest water on the planet to show people all the weird and wonderful life that exists below the surface is character building, but very rewarding and brings me so much joy. I had just started another trip down to the Antarctic Peninsula and just met my expedition leader. And he says, hey, I know this great site that I highly recommend that you dive at, and I will make sure that the ship is in the area so that you can do it. Great, what's the site? He's like, it's a wreck of an old whaling ship. To any history buffs in the room, please forgive me for this next part. I said, I'm not really interested in wrecks. He's like, no, trust me, you should really do this dive. Okay. I didn't want to shut him down, but my gut reaction was just that this wasn't my ideal dive, not just because I'm a huge nerd that has always been more interested in marine life than human history, but because for the job that I do, where the purpose of my dives is to create video presentations to educate people about how amazing and important life in the ocean is, I just didn't see this shipwreck as the best dive for that. On top of that, when you're diving in the coldest water on the planet, where you're usually getting ready for twice as long as you're actually going to be in the water for, sometimes when you're going to all that effort, you kind of want it to be worth it. So anyway, we get to the area where the dive is in, and my buddy and I get ready for this dive. All our thermals, gloves, socks, heated vests, all marshmallow packed under our dry suits, and of course our cameras. We load all the gear in the Zodiac and head out from the ship. And we start to approach this small protected cove and can start to see it. It's the Guvernøren, a wreck of a Norwegian whaling vessel that sunk in 1915. Above the surface, we can just see the bow of the ship, maybe about a quarter of the wreck sticking out of the water, and it's been taken over by a nesting colony of Antarctic terns. Apart from their squawking, we're surrounded by this beautiful icy coastline, and it's perfectly calm. I don't really know what to expect, so decided to start the dive right about where the wreck meets the water and go from there. And we start to descend and swim out along the top of the deck, and I can start to appreciate how big this wreck is. The deck's about 15 meters across, and the length of it extends far beyond what I can see away into the depths. This wreck is massive, and apart from being sunk, it's pretty well intact and preserved by the sub-freezing water that it's in. So we can see all the wooden and steel structure of the ship itself, as well as all the equipment that was used in the industry that it was part of. There's these huge, huge boilers, the size of a car, that were used for rendering whales into oil. And I also come across this big square opening into a hold in the deck. And when I lower myself down into it, my video lights, I can see that there are these wooden barrels filled with whale oil stuck floating up on the underside of the deck. So it's a bit eerie and definitely not a dive that I'm used to. But I'm realizing and appreciating how unique this experience is to get to collect images and share stories of what was clearly once a very important whaling factory ship. So I'm on this dive, I'm like, okay, this dive's pretty cool. But I also find it interesting that I haven't found much marine life yet, so I kind of want to keep exploring around. And I finally pick a spot to swim up and over the sides of the deck, and you get this real sense of going over the edge and into the unknown. So I'm following down the steep sides of the hull down to where the ship meets the seafloor, and my video lights are illuminating the scene in front of me, and I let out this very scuba-style audible exhale of realization and excitement. We all know the one. We've all done it. On one hand, I'm thinking, yes, I've found it. And on the other hand, I'm thinking, yes, it makes perfect sense. What I'm looking at on the sides of and all around the base of the wreck is by far the greatest concentration of marine life I have ever seen anywhere underwater in Antarctica. And I'm laughing at myself because it makes perfect sense that this wreck would be where you would find it. Because in Antarctica, the environment is so defined by ice, and that persists underwater as well. Because the mass of an iceberg, up to 90% of it, is below the surface. Icebergs physically scour and bulldoze the seafloor habitats, and that limits what life can persist at shallow depths. So anytime you have a vertical substrate like a rock wall, or in this case, a shipwreck, that's where you find the most life. But this is way more than I ever thought I would find in a place like this. I'm now at the stern end of the ship, and this part of the wreck is literally bursting at the seams with life. There are beautiful bright orange colonies of leaf-like bryozoans and huge groups of bright red brachiopods and big tunicates the size of footballs, and every overhanging surface of this wreck is covered in these massive, magnificent chandeliers of yellow sponges. And among all these encrusting filter feeders, there's big bright pink anemones, bigger than a dinner plate, and big bread loaves of white nudibranchs and fat sea stars everywhere. And it's the most incredible covering of diverse, colorful life that honestly rivals any tropical coral reef that I have ever seen. So this dive is blowing my mind, and I'm filming all the life as it spills over from the surface of the wreck out onto the rocky slope that it's resting on, and it starts to thin out towards the sedimenty seafloor, and I start to see it. And at first, it's just small pieces here and there, like breadcrumbs leading me away from the shipwreck. And it starts to get bigger and bigger and more and more. And it's extending just like the wreck did, far beyond into the distance away from what I can see. And this time, the sound that I exhale from my regulator is this quiet, oh my God. Because what I'm looking at is what I can only describe as an elephant graveyard of the bones of blue and fin whales, the largest animals that have ever existed on this planet. And again, it makes perfect sense because of where I am. The Gouvernoren is wrecked within Foyne Harbor of the Enterprise Islands. Sven Foyne was the inventor of the exploding harpoon, and he brought whaling down to Antarctica. and the islands are named for the enterprise of the whaling industry. So when the ship caught on fire, the captain ran it aground in this location because the protected nature of the cove made it well used for bringing in whale catches and processing the whales alongside the ships. And at the time, that involved discarding what was left of the whales once they had been stripped of their blubber. I'm swimming along this endless pile of enormous 100-plus-year-old skeletons, and I can feel my face getting hot underneath my mask, which is a strange sensation when you're diving in -2-degree water and your face went numb 30 seconds into the dive. But my face is getting hot because I want to cry. It's the most impactful dive I have ever done, and honestly one of the most humbling experiences of my life to get to see this. And the way it made me feel the first time I saw it is the way it makes me feel every single time I dive here. Most days that I get to work in Antarctica, I am so lucky to get to see humpback whales. And they're a species that have been estimated to recover to pre-whaling numbers. What's funny about this dive actually is that the area it's in isn't a typical spot that we usually go to for our typical expedition activities. You know, it's not right next to a penguin colony like a lot of our other dives. So to do this dive, the ship has to go out of its way to let us do it. And to justify it, they'll hang nearby just a couple 100 meters away, and they'll pass the time by watching humpback whales feeding all around the ship while we're underwater, just over there, filming the remains of the industry that once almost wiped these animals off the face of the planet. So it's pretty hard to put into words the contrast of these experiences, but they're pretty perfect examples to remind us of what life in the ocean is capable of if we just give it the chance. So when we think about something like whaling, it might make us think, wow, that was horrible, but look how far we've come and look at the progress that we've made. But when I dive here and see that elephant graveyard of whale bones, it makes me wonder not when, but if we will ever get to a point where we will feel that same way about how we currently treat the planet. Or in 100 years, are we going to look back and wonder why we didn't do more? It started as a dive that I had no interest in doing because I thought it was going to be a boring shipwreck that didn't offer me any educational stories to share with people. And now every time I start a trip to Antarctica, I meet up with the expedition leader and captain and say, I'm not trying to be high maintenance, but can I please do this dive? It's not just my favorite dive because it has the most incredible marine life I've ever seen underwater in Antarctica, or because it made me cry, but because it gives me the best story to tell, to remind others and myself that there is still so much more to save, and we have the ability to do just that. Thank you.
What a beautiful story. If you'd like to see pictures from that dive or learn more about Maya, visit our website, storyclatter.org. Our website is just one way to connect with the Story Clatter, but there are so many other ways. You can always follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky. Head to storyclatter.org to become a financial supporter. If you're interested in coming to one of our live shows or starting a Story Clatter show in your own community, you can find the details on our website. You can also learn how to tell your own science story or send us your science story too. And if you like this podcast, tell a friend, share an episode, introduce someone to Story Clatter, and help bring more people into the world of science storytelling. This podcast is produced by me, Misha Gajewski, along with Jen Chen, Nikisha Roberts-Washington, and Aaron Barker. The stories featured in today's episode were produced by Brian Kett, Paula Croxon, and Grant Bowen. Special thanks goes out to the Story Clatter's board and team. Our theme music is by Ghost, and next week I'll be back with 2 beautiful stories about honoring loved ones. Until next time, thanks so much for listening.